The Galactic Archaeological Institute floated in the darkness of space like a massive ring of silver and glass. Its corridors stretched for miles in every direction and housed the greatest mysteries the known galaxy had ever discovered. But none fascinated or frustrated the researchers more than the object in Chamber 7. Katie Brooks pressed her face against the viewing window and stared at the sphere with wide eyes. She had seen pictures before arriving at the station, but nothing prepared her for the reality of it. The perfect smoothness of its surface, the way it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Magnificent, is it not? Dr. Monash appeared beside her. The ancient Orvian stood nearly 8 feet, tall with skin that shimmered like oil on water and 4 eyes that blinked independently. "It is incredible," Katie said. Her voice came out quieter than she intended, almost reverent in the presence of something so ancient and unknown. 300 cycles we have studied it, Dr. Monash continued. His voice carried the weight of centuries spent in pursuit of knowledge. Every known species has attempted contact. Telepaths have projected their consciousness at it. Energy beings have tried to merge with it. Quantum entanglers have sought to link with its atomic structure. Nothing produces a response. Katie watched as a team of Kresh scientists entered the chamber below. Their insect-like bodies moved with precise coordination as they arranged chemical sensors around the floating sphere. "What do you think it is?" Katie asked. "A weapon? Perhaps, or a beacon, a library, a tomb?" Dr. Monash tilted his head, and what Katie had learned was the Orvian equivalent of a shrug, or something we have no words for because our understanding remains too limited. Commander Vexler approached. From behind, the Kethran military officer's scales gleamed under the station lights, and his 3-fingered hands rested on the weapons at his belt. "Another human," he said with barely concealed disdain. "Tell me, intern, what possible contribution can your species make here when civilizations millions of years older than yours have failed?" Katie felt her cheeks burn, but kept her voice steady. "I am here to learn, Commander, and sometimes a fresh perspective helps." "Fresh?" Vexler's throat sack inflated, a sign of amusement among his people. "You mean ignorant humanity only achieved faster than light travel 30 cycles ago? You are children playing at science. That will be enough." "Commander," Professor Ellen Dross stepped between them. Katie's mentor was a stern woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Katie is here by official appointment and deserves the same respect as any researcher." Vex, Lore, made a dismissive gesture and walked away. Katie let out a breath. She had not realized she was holding. "Do not let him get to you," Professor Dross said quietly. "Half the species here resent humanity's inclusion in galactic affairs. They will look for any excuse to prove we do not belong. Then I will just have to prove them wrong," Katie said with more confidence than. She felt the observation deck filled with representatives from a dozen different species over the next hour. Today's activation attempt would involve the lumens, beings of pure energy who existed in specially designed containment suits. Katie found a spot near the back of the crowd and watched as the lumen representative entered Chamber 7. The being's form shifted and pulsed with colors that hurt to look at directly. "They will attempt resonance matching," Dr. Monash explained to those gathered. "If the sphere contains any form of energy signature, the lumen should be able to detect and harmonize with it." The lumen began its work. Waves of energy poured from its form and washed over the sphere in cascading patterns of light and color. But the obsidian surface remained unchanged, unaffected, as silent as it had been for 3 centuries. After 20 minutes, the lumen withdrew. Disappointed murmurs rippled through the observers. "Another failure," Vexler announced loudly. "Perhaps we should accept that this object will never reveal its secrets, or perhaps it has no secrets to reveal and is merely an interesting rock. 300 cycles of study suggests otherwise," Dr. Monash replied calmly. Katie barely heard the argument that followed. She was too focused on the sphere itself. The way it hung in the containment field, perfect and pristine and utterly mysterious. The demonstration ended, and the observers began to disperse. Katie lingered, unwilling to leave just yet. "You should rest," Professor Dross said. "Your quarters are ready, and tomorrow we begin your actual assignment in the linguistics department." "Just a few more minutes," Katie pleaded. Her mentor smiled. "Very well. But do not stay too long. This station operates on a strict schedule." Katie found herself alone in the observation deck. Below, the sphere floated in its eternal silence, stretched her arms above her head, working out the stiffness from hours spent traveling through hyperspace to reach the station. Her muscles ached, and her neck felt tight. The sphere moved. Katie froze. Her arms were still raised above her head, and the sphere had tilted, the top angling slightly to one side, mirroring the exact position of her raised arms. Her heart hammered in her chest. She lowered her arms slowly, and the sphere returned to its neutral position. "No," she whispered. "That is impossible." She raised her left arm. The sphere tilted left. She raised her right arm. It tilted right. She took a step back from the window. The sphere retreated in its containment field. "Dr. Monash." Katie's shout echoed through the empty observation deck. "Professor Dross, someone." Footsteps pounded down the corridor. Within seconds, Dr. Monash burst through the door with Professor Dross right behind him. "What is wrong?" the Orvian demanded. "The sphere." Katie pointed with a shaking hand. "It moved," it responded to me. "Impossible," Dr. Monash said, but his four eyes fixed on the sphere with sudden intensity. "Show me." Katie raised her right hand slowly. The sphere tilted to match her movement. Professor Dross gasped. Dr. Monash's throat membranes fluttered with agitation. Again, he commanded. Katie performed a series of simple movements, raising both arms, turning her head, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Each time the sphere responded, matching her actions with impossible precision. "Alert, Commander Vexler," Dr. Monash said to Professor Dross. "Alert everyone. After 300 cycles of silence, the Harbinger sphere has finally responded." Within minutes, Chamber 7 became chaos. Scientists and military personnel flooded the observation deck, while Katie stood frozen in place. Afraid to move, afraid that any action might cause the sphere to stop responding. Vexler pushed through the crowd, his eyes fixed on Katie with an expression she could not read. "The human," he said. "Of course it would be the human. What did you do to it? What technology are you carrying? What trick is this?" "No trick," Katie said. Her voice shook, but she met his gaze directly. "I stretched, I moved, and it moved with me." "Lies." Vexler started forward, but Dr. Monash blocked his path. "We will test this properly," the Orvian said, "with full sensor recordings and multiple observers. If this human has somehow activated the sphere after 3 centuries, we must understand how and why." Katie looked down at her hands. They were ordinary human hands. Nothing special. Nothing that should be able to affect ancient technology that predated her entire species. Yet somehow, impossibly, the sphere had seen her, had recognized her, had chosen to respond. She raised her hand one more time and watched the sphere mirror her movement. And for the first time since arriving at the station, Katie wondered if maybe humanity did have something unique to offer after all. The question that would haunt her in the days to come began to form in her mind. Why her? And what did the sphere want? The testing chamber felt colder than before, or perhaps Katie only imagined it, her nerves making everything seem sharper and more intense as she stood before the sphere with 20 different species watching her every move. "Raise your left hand." Dr. Monash's voice came through the speakers, calm and methodical, despite the historical significance of what they were witnessing. Katie lifted her left hand slowly. The sphere tilted to match her movement exactly, the lag between her action and its response measuring precisely 1.3 seconds. Now your right hand." Dr. Minash continued. She obeyed. Again, the sphere mirrored her. "That same strange delay between cause and effect. It is considering," Dr. Minash murmured. Katie heard the wonder in his voice, even through the speaker system. Not simply reacting, but choosing to respond. Commander Vexlor's voice cut through, harsh and suspicious. "Or the human has implanted a device. Scan her again. Scan everything. We have scanned her 17 times. Professor Dross said. Her tone carried the edge of someone losing patience. "There are no devices, no implants, no technology of any kind that could explain this." "Then how?" Vexlor began. "That is what we are here to discover." Dr. Minash interrupted. "Katie, please continue. Try more complex movements." Katie took a deep breath and began to move through a series of actions. She stepped forward, and the sphere advanced in its field. She turned in the circle, and it rotated. She jumped, and it rose higher. In the containment chamber, every movement she made with intention and awareness produced a response. But when she accidentally scratched her nose or shifted her weight without thinking, the sphere ignored her completely. Fascinating. Dr. Minash breathed. It responds only to deliberate action, to conscious choice. "Katie, try something involuntary. Blink rapidly or cough." Katie blinked several times in quick succession. The sphere remained motionless, so it reads intention somehow. Professor Dross said, "Not just movement, but the consciousness behind the movement," which makes no sense. Another researcher argued. Katie recognized the voice as belonging to Dr. Solis. A Versailles crystalline being, no known technology, can distinguish between voluntary and involuntary action at a distance. Perhaps it is not technology as we understand it. Dr. Minash suggested Katie barely heard the debate. She was too focused on the sphere itself, trying to understand what it wanted from her, why it had waited 3 centuries to respond and then chosen her of all people. "Can we test other humans?" Someone asked. An excellent suggestion. Vexlor said quickly, too quickly. Katie thought. He wanted her to be replaceable, wanted humanity's role to be as minimal as possible. Lieutenant Ryan Carter volunteered first. He was the chief of human security on the station, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes who had welcomed Katie on her first day, entered the chamber and stood where Katie had stood. He raised his hands, moved through the same sequence of actions, even tried creating his own movements. The sphere did not respond. It hung in the field as silent and still as it had been for 300 cycles. Professor Dross tried next. Then every other human stationed at the Institute, 27 humans in total, attempted to reproduce. Katie's connection. The sphere ignored them all. It is only her. Dr. Minash said, his 4 eyes fixed on Katie with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Something about this specific human triggers the response. Then she is dangerous. Vexler said flatly, "We should remove her from the station until we understand what." "Absolutely not." Professor Dross stepped forward. Her voice rang with authority. "Katie represents the first breakthrough in 3 centuries of research. Removing her would be unconscionable." The Kethran commander may have a point. Another voice joined the argument. Katie recognized Ambassador Thren, a politician from the collective worlds. If we do not understand why this human activates the sphere, we cannot assess the risk. The debate raged around her while Katie stood in the chamber with the sphere. She tuned out the voices and focused entirely on the obsidian surface before her. "Why me?" she asked aloud, knowing the sphere could not understand her words, but needing to ask anyway. "What do you want?" The sphere did not move, but something happened. Something subtle that Katie could not quite name. She moved closer to the containment field. The sphere drifted toward her in response. "Katie, step back," Dr. Minash warned. "Wait," she said. I think it is trying to communicate. It mirrors your movements." Vexler scoffed. "That is not communication. That is simple mimicry. No. Katie shook her head. It is more than that. Watch. She performed a deliberate sequence. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Then she spread her arms wide. The sphere followed her forward motion, retreated with her. But when she spread her arms, it did something different. It rotated through a complex pattern of tilts and turns that seemed almost like a response rather than a mirror. Did you see that? Katie's voice rose with excitement. It did not copy me that time, it answered. Dr. Menash's voice came quick and urgent. Do it again. The exact same sequence. Katie repeated her movements, 3 forward, 2 back, arms spread again. The sphere performed its own pattern and response. A different pattern this time, but clearly intentional, clearly meant to convey something. It is a language. Professor Dross whispered, not spoken or written or transmitted. A language of movement. Impossible. Someone said, we are watching it happen. Dr. Menash countered. Katie, try something else. Create a pattern and see how it responds. Katie thought for a moment. She remembered her childhood ballet classes, the way her teacher had taught them to tell stories through dance. She moved through a simple sequence, arms reaching up like branches, body swaying like wind through trees, hands forming a circle like the sun. The sphere watched, waited through that 1.3-second delay, then performed its own sequence. Katie had no idea what it meant, but she felt something, an impression of meaning hovering just beyond her grasp, like a word on the tip of her tongue that refused to come. This will take time, Dr. Menash said. We must record every movement, every response, build a database of interactions, or we could destroy it, Wexler suggested. Before whatever. This goes too far. You would destroy the greatest archaeological find in galactic history out of fear? Professor Dross's voice dripped with contempt. I would protect the galaxy from an unknown threat. Wexler shot back. Katie ignored them both. She was experimenting now, trying different movements, watching how the sphere responded. She tried drawing shapes in the air with her finger. The sphere responded to some and ignored others. She tried moving to different rhythms. Fast, slow, staccato, flowing. Each produced different reactions. Hours passed. Katie lost track of time as she worked, sweat soaking through her uniform as she pushed her body through movement after movement. Katie, you need to rest, Professor Dross finally said. Just a little longer. Katie pleaded. I think I am starting to understand. She performed a new sequence, something that felt right instinctively, though she could not have explained why. She stepped forward 3 times, turned to the left, raised both arms, then brought them down in a sweeping motion. The sphere responded immediately, but not with movement. It pulsed with energy. Sensors around the chamber screamed warnings as power readings spiked beyond their measurement capacity. A holographic image burst into existence above the sphere. Katie stumbled backward in shock. The image showed stars, millions of them. And then the stars began to die. Worlds burned in the projection. Entire civilizations consumed by something vast and terrible that moved through the galaxy like a wave of destruction. At the center of it all appeared a symbol, a spiral within a circle within a triangle. And Katie somehow knew with absolute certainty that this symbol meant danger, meant threat, meant death. The image vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The sphere settled back into its neutral position. Silent once more, Katie collapsed to her knees. Her whole body shook from exhaustion and fear. What was that? She gasped. Menash's voice came through the speakers, quiet and shaken. I believe that was a warning. And if I'm interpreting the timeline correctly, it was a warning about something that happened approximately 50,000 cycles ago, or something that will happen. Professor Dross added grimly. Katie stared at the sphere. Suddenly, it seemed less like an archaeological curiosity and more like a message in a bottle, sent by a dying civilization in desperate hope that someone, someday, would learn to read it. We need to understand this language, she said. Whatever they were trying to warn us about, we need to know. Commander Vexler's voice cut through. Cold and final. Or we need to destroy this thing before it brings that same destruction down on us. Katie looked up at the observation deck where the representatives of a dozen species watched her with expressions ranging from wonder to fear. To calculation, she had asked the sphere why it chose her. Now she was beginning to understand that perhaps she had not asked the right question. The question was not why her, the question was what came next, and whether the galaxy was ready for the answer. Katie spent the next week living in Chamber 7. She ate her meals there, slept on a cot that Professor Dross had brought in, and spent every waking hour trying to learn the language that was not words. Dr. Monash worked alongside her with the patience of someone who had spent centuries pursuing knowledge. He recorded every movement Katie made and every response the sphere gave, building vast databases of interactions that other researchers pored over in hopes of finding patterns. You are approaching this wrong, Katie said on the 5th day, frustration making her voice sharp. You are treating it like mathematics, like code to be broken, but it does not feel mathematical. Then what does it feel like? Dr. Monash asked. His tone held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. Katie struggled to find words. Like music, maybe, or poetry, like the movements have emotion behind them, meaning that comes from feeling rather than logic. Humans are highly attuned to emotional communication, Professor Dross observed. She sat nearby reviewing data on her tablet. Your species evolved as social creatures. You read facial expressions, body language, subtle cues that other species process differently or not at all. The sphere is not emotional, Vexler said from his position near the door. He had taken to observing every session, his suspicion never wavering. It is a machine, a tool attributing feelings to it as primitive thinking. Maybe, Katie said. Or maybe we are the primitive ones for thinking consciousness and emotion only exist in biological forms. She turned back to the sphere. Over the past days, she had learned to recognize certain responses, certain patterns that seemed to carry consistent meaning when she moved slowly and smoothly. The sphere responded with gentle rotations when she moved with sharp, sudden gestures. It replied with rapid spins and tilts. It is teaching me, she said suddenly, the realization hitting her like lightning. Not just responding, teaching, explain. Dr. Monash said Katie performed a movement sequence she had done before. Arms up, turn left, step forward. The sphere had always responded the same way to this pattern. But this time, it did something different. It performed her movement back to her, then added something new at the end, a rotation she had never seen before. It is showing me what comes next in the sequence. Katie breathed, like a teacher correcting a student. She tried to copy the sphere's addition to her movement. Her first attempt was clumsy, but the sphere repeated the pattern more slowly, breaking it down into smaller components. Incredible, Professor Dross whispered. Hour after hour, Katie worked, learning sequences the way she had once learned dance routines in childhood, through repetition, through muscle memory, through something deeper than conscious thought. On the 7th day, Dr. Monash called a meeting of the senior research staff. Katie attended via video link, unwilling to leave the chamber for long. I have found something, Dr. Monash announced. His 4 eyes gleamed with excitement. The world below this station, Terminus Prime. I have been reviewing our archaeological surveys. He brought up images on the screen, ruins of impossible age, structures that predated any known galactic civilization. We always assumed Terminus Prime was simply one more dead world in a galaxy full of them. Dr. Monash continued. But the dating on these ruins puts them at approximately 50,000 cycles old. The same age as the warning vision, Professor Dross interrupted. Precisely, Dr. Monash said. And there is more. I have been comparing the architectural patterns in the ruins to the movement sequences Katie has been learning. He overlaid two images, a carved stone frieze from Terminus Prime and a motion capture diagram of Katie's movements. The patterns matched with impossible precision. The ancients who built these ruins, Dr. Monash said quietly. They communicated through movement. Their entire civilization was built on the same language the sphere is teaching Katie. Silence fell over the meeting. Even Vexler seemed stunned into quiet. But why humanity? Someone finally asked, why would an ancient alien language respond to human movement? Katie felt a chill run down her spine. She had been researching human history in her spare moments, looking for anything that might explain her connection to the sphere. 50,000 years ago, she said slowly, that was when humans, anatomically modern humans, started creating art, making complex tools, burying their dead with ceremony. It was when we became truly human in the way we think of ourselves now. Coincidence? Vexler said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. I do not believe in coincidences of this magnitude. Dr. Monash said, not when the timing aligned so perfectly. Professor Dross leaned forward. Are you suggesting the Terminus civilization somehow influenced human evolution? Or that we share a common ancestor, Dr. Monash said. Or that they seeded genetic material across the galaxy, hoping one species would develop the right traits. This is madness, Vexler stood abruptly. You are saying humanity, the youngest and least advanced species in the galactic community, is somehow special? Chosen, not chosen, Katie said from the screen. Taught someone 50,000 years ago. Planted seeds hoping something would grow. We just happened to be the first garden where the seeds took root. The meeting dissolved into argument. Some species representatives were outraged at the suggestion that humanity had any special connection to the galaxy's most ancient civilization. Others were intrigued. A few seemed frightened by the implications. Katie tuned it all out and returned her focus to the sphere. She performed the sequence it had been teaching her, the movements flowing more naturally now after days of practice. The sphere responded with a new image. Not the warning vision this time, but something different. She saw humanoid figures. Their features obscured, but their forms clearly not human. Not any species she recognized. They moved together in intricate patterns, dancing in formation as they danced. The world around them transformed. Katie watched in awe as atmosphere appeared where there had been vacuum, as water flowed across barren stone, as vegetation sprouted and spread and fast forward. They are terraforming, she whispered, but not with machines. They are doing it through movement, through will. The image shifted, showed the same figures teaching others, spreading across worlds, creating gardens of life throughout an empty galaxy. Then the image darkened. The threat appeared. The same vast and terrible presence from the warning vision. Consuming world after world, the dancing figures gathered together. They performed one final massive pattern. Their movements synchronized across thousands of participants, and as they danced, they created something. The image zoomed in on their creation, a sphere, smooth and black, containing within it all the knowledge they had gathered, all the art they had perfected. The Harbinger sphere, Katie said. They made it as a seed. As a message, they knew they were going to die. The image showed dozens of spheres being sent out across the galaxy. Then the vision ended and the sphere fell silent again. Katie sat down heavily. Her mind raced with the implications of what she had seen. Katie? Professor Dross's voice came through the speaker. Are you all right? They were saying goodbye, Katie said. Tears streamed down her face, though she could not explain why she was crying. The whole civilization. Everything they were. They put it into these spheres and sent them out, hoping someone would find them, would learn their language, would remember they existed, and carry on their work, Dr. Monash added quietly. He had been watching through the observation window. Whatever that work was, Ryan Carter appeared in the chamber doorway, his face grave. "Katie, you need to see this. Commander Vexler is holding a meeting with the military representatives. He is arguing that the sphere represents a threat and should be destroyed immediately." "He cannot do that." Katie started to rise. "He can, and he will if he gets enough support," Ryan said. "Some of the species here are scared. They see humanity making contact with ancient technology. They do not understand, and it terrifies them. We need time," Katie said desperately. "The sphere is trying to teach me something important. If we destroy it now, we will never know." "Then you need to learn faster," Ryan said bluntly. "Because Vexler is pushing for a vote within the next 48 hours. Katie turned back to the sphere. It floated peacefully in its containment field, unaware or uncaring that its existence hung in the balance. "Show me more," she said to it. "Please, show me what you need me to understand." She began to dance, not the careful experimental movements she had been doing, but something more instinctive, more desperate. The sphere responded immediately. It joined her in the dance, their movements intertwining and complementing each other in ways that seemed impossible for an object and a person. Images flashed through Katie's mind, not projected holograms, but something more direct, more intimate. She saw the Terminus civilization at its height, saw how they had spread life and consciousness throughout the galaxy, saw how they had tried to stand against the coming darkness, as she saw that the darkness had not been destroyed, only delayed, pushed back to the edges of known space where it waited, even now, growing stronger. Preparing to return, the vision broke. Katie staggered and would have fallen if Ryan had not caught her. "What did you see?" he asked. "Everything," Katie gasped. "I saw everything. And Ryan, it is still out there. The thing that killed them. It is coming back." She looked up at the observation deck where dozens of species representatives watched her with expressions of fear and suspicion. The vote was scheduled for the following morning. Katie had one night to prove the sphere's value, or watch it be destroyed along with humanity's only link to the Terminus civilization. She refused to sleep. Instead, she pushed herself harder than ever, moving through sequence after sequence until her muscles screamed and sweat poured down her face. "You will collapse if you continue this way," Dr. Monash warned. He had remained with her through the long hours while other researchers departed to rest. "Then I collapse," Katie said through gritted teeth. "But I will not stop until I understand what they are trying to tell me." The sphere seemed to sense her urgency. Its responses came faster now, the 1.3-second delay shortening to less than a second, as if it too understood time was running out. Professor Dross returned near midnight carrying coffee and food. "Eat," she commanded. "You are no good to anyone if you pass out from exhaustion." Katie grabbed the coffee gratefully, but barely tasted the food. Her attention never left the sphere. Why did they choose movement as their language? She asked suddenly, why not something more, I do not know, more efficient? Perhaps movement was efficient for them, Dr. Monash suggested. Every species communicates through the medium that suits their biology and culture. For humans, sound and gesture. For Orvians, thought and light. For the Kresh, chemical signals. But the Terminus civilization used movement, Katie said. And somehow, 50,000 years later, humans evolved to use movement too, not just to communicate, but to express ourselves, to create art, to tell stories. Because they taught us, Professor Dross finished the thought. Not directly, but through genetic influence, through cultural seeds planted in our ancient ancestors. Katie performed a complex sequence. The sphere responded with an image that made her heart stop. She saw Earth, her home world. As it had been 50,000 years ago, small groups of humans huddled around fires while something moved among them. Tall figures that glowed with soft light, teaching the humans to dance, to move with purpose and meaning. They were there. Katie breathed. On Earth, they visited us before they died. Impossible to prove. Vexler's voice came from the observation deck. Katie had not realized he was there. Convenient timing for this revelation. Just hours before the vote. Convenient or not, it is what the sphere is showing me. Katie shot back, and we have only your word for what you see in these visions. Vexler descended the stairs to the chamber entrance. Perhaps you are making it all up, or perhaps you are delusional. Seeing what you want to see. The recordings show the same images. Professor Dross began. The recordings show lights and patterns. Vexler interrupted. Interpretation remains subjective. And I notice all these revelations paint humanity as special. As chosen. How predictable. Katie felt anger flare hot in her chest. You think I want this? You think I wanted to be the only one who can communicate with this thing? I did not ask for any of this. Yet you exploit it nonetheless, Vexler said coldly. Using ancient fears and mysteries to elevate your primitive species above those who have built civilizations while your ancestors were still living in caves. That is enough, Dr. Monash stepped between them. No. Katie interrupted. Let him speak. I want to hear what he really thinks. Vexler's eyes gleamed. I think you are dangerous. Human. I think this sphere is dangerous, and I think destroying both would be the safest course for the galaxy, even if it means losing the knowledge to fight what is coming. Katie demanded. There is no proof anything is coming, Vexler said. Only your visions and interpretations, fear-mongering to prevent the inevitable. Katie made a decision in that moment. She turned back to the sphere and began the most complex sequence she had yet attempted. She moved through every pattern the sphere had taught her, weaving them together into something larger, something that felt almost like a story told through motion. The sphere responded. Not with images this time, but with something more. It opened. The surface of the perfect sphere cracked, not breaking, but unfurling like a flower, revealing crystalline structures within that pulsed with light and energy. What have you done? Vexler's voice rose in alarm. Security. Contain the human. Wait. Dr. Monash raised a hand. Look. The crystalline structures were projecting directly into Katie's mind now. Not images, but pure information. Knowledge flooding into her consciousness faster than thought. She saw the true history of the Terminus civilization, how they had evolved from beings of simple matter into something that transcended physical form, becoming creatures of will and consciousness that could shape reality through focused intention. She understood now why they used movement as communication, because movement was the bridge between thought and action. Between intention and creation, they moved and the universe moved with them. She saw how they had spread across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as gardeners, planting the seeds of life on barren worlds, guiding evolution through subtle influences, hoping to create a galaxy filled with diverse consciousness. And she saw the thread, the entity from beyond known space that consumed consciousness itself, that fed on thought and will and left behind only empty matter. The Terminus civilization had fought it and held it back for centuries, but in the end they could not destroy it, only push it away and hope the future species would be ready when it returned. It is coming back, Katie heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. In approximately 200 years, it will reach the galactic core, and if we are not prepared, every conscious species in the galaxy will be consumed. The information kept flowing. She learned about the other harbinger spheres scattered across known and unknown space, each containing fragments of the Terminus knowledge, each waiting for the right species to unlock them. She learned that not all spheres would respond to humans. Some required different forms of consciousness, different ways of understanding. The Terminus had created them to teach all possible forms of intelligence, and she learned the defensive techniques, the ways movement and will could be combined to create shields of consciousness, weapons of focused intention. The same tools the Terminus had used to fight the entity before when the flow of information finally stopped. Katie collapsed to her knees. Her nose bled, and her vision swam, but her mind burned with understanding. "Katie." Professor Dross rushed to her side. "Are you hurt?" "I am fine," Katie managed. "I am." She looked up at the sphere, now fully opened. Its crystalline heart exposed. "I understand now what they were, what they wanted. What we need to do." Vexler stood frozen. His earlier bravado had vanished, replaced by naked fear. "What did it do to you?" "It taught me," Katie said simply. "Everything the Terminus civilization knew about fighting the entity. It is all here now. In my mind, one human cannot save the galaxy," Vexler said, but his voice shook. "You are right," Katie agreed. "One human cannot, but I do not have to. There are other spheres out there, waiting to teach others. We need to find them, activate them. Learn everything we can before the entity arrives." Dr. Menash's voice came quiet and wondering. "You truly believe this threat is real?" "I know it is real," Katie said. "I have seen what it did to the Terminus civilization. Watch them die fighting to give us time to prepare. If we waste that time, if we let fear and suspicion divide us," she looked directly at Vexler, "then we will die just as they did. And there will be no one left to remember we existed." The chamber fell silent above them on the observation deck. Dozens of species representatives watched and waited. "The vote is in 6 hours. Professor Dross said finally, "We need to present this to the council." "They will not believe me," Katie said. "Why should they? I am just a human intern who claims to have received ancient knowledge from a mysterious artifact." "Then we make them believe," Ryan Carter said from the doorway. Katie had not heard him enter. "We show them what you can do with this knowledge." "What do you mean?" Katie asked. Ryan gestured to the chamber around them. "The sphere opened for you. You made it respond when no one else could. If you truly have this knowledge, this ability to combine movement, and will prove it, show them something impossible." Katie looked down at her hands. They still shook from exhaustion, but she could feel it now. The knowledge burning inside her, the understanding of how the Terminus had shaped reality through conscious intent. "All right," she said. "I will show them." She stood on trembling legs and moved to the center of the chamber. She began to dance. But this was not the experimental movements of before. This was deliberate, controlled, infused with will and purpose as she moved. The air around her began to shimmer. Particles of dust in the chamber started to glow, forming patterns that matched her movements. Creating light where there should have been none, gasps echoed from the observation deck. Even Vexler stepped back in shock. Katie continued, pushing harder, reaching deeper into the knowledge the sphere had given her. And for just a moment, just a brief instant, she made the impossible happen. A small sphere of light appeared in the air before her. Not projected, not technological, created purely through focused will and physical expression. It lasted only seconds before winking out. Katie collapsed again, completely drained, but it had been enough. She looked up at the observation deck and saw wonder replacing fear on many faces. Saw even Vexler staring at her with something approaching respect. "That," she said between gasping breaths. The vote never happened. By dawn, Commander Vexler had withdrawn his motion to destroy the sphere and instead proposed something that shocked everyone who knew him: a joint expedition to locate and activate the remaining Harbinger spheres. Across the galaxy, Katie sat in the medical bay while doctors checked her vitals and asked endless questions about what she had experienced. Her body was exhausted, but her mind felt clearer than ever before, filled with knowledge that would take years to fully process and understand. "You should rest for at least a week," the Orvian physician said. His instruments beeped and hummed as they scanned her. "What you did to your body cannot wait," Katie interrupted gently. Every day we delay is one less day we have to prepare. Professor Dross entered the bay carrying a datapad. The council has approved the expedition. They are assembling a crew now from volunteers across every major species. Vexler changed his mind quickly. Katie observed. He saw what you did, Professor Dross said. And unlike some, he is capable of changing his position when presented with new evidence. He may not like humanity, but he loves the galaxy more than he hates us. Dr. Monash appeared next. All four of his eyes looked tired but excited. The sphere has provided us with coordinates, locations of 17 other Harbinger spheres within reachable space. Some are on dead worlds. Others buried deep in active civilizations that never recognized what they possessed. 17. Katie breathed. How many are there total? Unknown, Dr. Monash admitted. The knowledge you received was fragmentary pieces of a larger whole. Each sphere contains different information, different aspects of terminus wisdom, so we need to find them all. Katie said, not all, Dr. Monash corrected, but enough to understand the defensive techniques, enough to teach multiple species how to use them, enough to stand a chance when the entity arrives. Ryan Cotter joined them. He wore the insignia of the expedition's chief security officer. Your ship is nearly ready, the Swift Current. A deep space explorer with accommodations for 24 crew members from various species. When do we leave? Katie asked. 2 days, Ryan said. Assuming you can walk by then. Katie swung her legs off the medical bed. I can walk now, the physician protested, but Katie ignored him. She had spent enough time lying down while the galaxy needed action. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Katie met the other crew members, a diverse group representing 12 different species who had volunteered to search for ancient artifacts none of them fully understood. Commander Vexler surprised her by requesting the FUS position of military advisor when they met to discuss it. His usual hostility had been replaced by something approaching respect. I was wrong about you, he said without preamble. About humanity, I let fear and prejudice cloud my judgment. Most species feel the same way you did, Katie said. We are new. Unknown, of course you were cautious. Cautious is wise, Vexler said. What I was went beyond caution into active hostility. That was wrong. I am not asking for forgiveness, only for the chance to help correct my error. Katie extended her hand, a human gesture she had to explain before. Vexler understood it meant peace between them. The Swift Current launched on schedule. Katie stood on the bridge with Professor Dross, Dr. Monash, Ryan, and Vexler as the ship detached from the station and engaged its faster-than-light drive. Their first destination was a world called Kelshara, a thriving Kresh colony where ground-penetrating scans had detected an anomaly matching Harbinger sphere characteristics buried beneath the capital city. 300 years we lived above it, the Kresh governor said when they arrived, never knowing what rested beneath our foundations. The excavation took 2 weeks when they finally exposed the sphere. It looked identical to the one on Terminus Prime. Perfect black surface absorbing all light. Katie approached it with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Would it respond to her as the first sphere had? She raised her hand. The sphere remained motionless. Try someone else, Dr. Monash suggested. They went through the entire crew, humans, Orvians, Kresh for Psi, every species present. The sphere ignored them all. Katie felt disappointment wash over her. Maybe this one is broken, or maybe it requires something different. A Kresh scientist named Tikmar suggested. He was a linguistic specialist who had joined the expedition specifically to help decipher sphere communication. Try something abstract, Katie suggested. The first sphere responded to my movement. Maybe this one responds to something only the Kresh possess. Tikmar approached the sphere. He began to emit a complex series of pheromones. chemical signals that carried meaning in Kresh society. The sphere remained still for a long moment. Then it began to pulse with light synchronized to Tikmar's chemical emissions. It works. Professor Dross gasped. Chemical language over the following weeks. Tikmar learned to communicate with the sphere just as Katie had learned with the first one. The knowledge it contained focused on different aspects of Terminus wisdom, the science of matter manipulation, the ways consciousness could interact with physical reality at the quantum level. Each sphere is specialized. Dr. Monash realized, together they form a complete education. Separately, they teach different disciplines. The expedition continued. They found a sphere on a frozen moon that responded only to the telepathic Orvians, teaching them techniques for linking minds across vast distances. Another sphere, floating in the debris field of a destroyed world, activated for a lumen energy being and revealed secrets about manipulating fundamental forces. A sphere buried in a gas giant's atmosphere responded to sound, specifically to the complex vocalizations of a species called the harmonics, who had evolved in airborne colonies. Each discovery brought new understanding, and each new species learned their own unique way of accessing Terminus knowledge. Katie coordinated the learning, sharing what she knew, helping others find their own connections to the spheres. 6 months into the expedition, they had activated 9 spheres and trained representatives from 8 species in different aspects of Terminus defensive techniques. It is not enough, Vexler said during a crew meeting. 9 spheres, 8 species. We need dozens, hundreds. The entity will not be stopped by a handful of trained individuals. Then we train more, Katie said. Everyone I teach can teach others. Knowledge spreads exponentially if we let it. But time is limited, Professor Dross pointed out. 200 years sounds like a lot. But to build a galactic defense network, to train entire populations. We start now, and we do not stop, Katie said firmly. The Terminus civilization prepared for centuries before facing the entity. We have less time, but we also have their knowledge to guide us. We can do this. Dr. Monash brought up a star chart showing the locations of all known and suspected Harbinger spheres. 17 confirmed, 43 possibles, countless more waiting to be discovered in unexplored space. This will be the work of generations, he said quietly. Then we make sure each generation understands what they are working toward. Ryan said. Katie stood and moved to the viewport. Stars streaked past as the ship traveled between worlds. She thought about the vision the first sphere had shown her, the Terminus civilization in its final days, creating these seeds of knowledge and sending them out in desperate hope. They had died so that others might live, had sacrificed everything to give the future a chance. They danced worlds into being, Katie said aloud, created life where there was none, spread consciousness across an empty galaxy, and when they knew they were going to die, they did not give up. They left us the tools to continue their work. She turned back to face her crew, humans and aliens working together, each contributing their unique strengths to a shared goal. We are not going to let them down, Katie said. We have 200 years to prepare. That is 200 years of teaching, training, building. 200 years to become what the galaxy needs us to be. And if we fail? Vexler asked, not challenging, just asking honestly. Then we fail dancing, Katie said with a slight smile. We fail trying, fighting, refusing to surrender. We failed the way the Terminus did, with dignity and purpose, and the hope that even in failure, we leave something behind for those who come. After, the crew was silent for a moment. Then Tikmar began to emit a pheromone pattern that Katie had learned meant agreement and determination. The Armanashes. Thought projections echoed with resolve, the lumen energy being pulsed with harmonious frequencies one by one. Each species present expressed their commitment in their own way, A galaxy of different voices unified in common purpose. Katie looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there in the darkness between galaxies, the entity waited, but here in the light, consciousness prepared, learning, growing, becoming something the universe had never seen before. Every form of intelligence working together, combining their strengths, ready to stand against the darkness. The first sphere had asked her why it mirrored her steps. Now Katie understood the answer. It mirrored her steps so she would learn to lead the dance. And now the entire galaxy was learning the steps with her. Set course for the next coordinates. Katie ordered, "We have work to do." The swift current turned toward the next world, the next sphere, the next piece of the puzzle that would save them all. And in her quarters, later that night, Katie practiced the movements alone, not because she needed to anymore, but because she wanted to.